Well, in honor of the people that I've had coming to the videos lately saying that they'd rather not see an intro, here's a non-intro for you guys. Just tell me when you're ready. Oh, you ready? Okay. What is going on, guys? So today we are back with another video talking about another Pokemon in the Jungle Cup, diving a little bit deeper. And today we're actually going to be looking at Masquerain, which, interestingly, Masquerain has always been kind of enticing. I definitely wanted to take a look at Masquerain a couple of cups ago because Masquerain has some very interesting, unique moves to really go with it. But now actually that these moves actually have stat boosting or debuffing or buffing or debuffing abilities, whichever way you want to talk about it, very, very cool. I really do like I really like the aspect of having a huge toolkit to work with. So let's actually get straight into Masquerain here. So I could have wrote this a little bit bigger now that I think about it. Anyways, we'll probably zoom, but I'm trying to write bigger and put more information on green screens for you guys to be able to see better. Anyways, Masquerain, bug and flying type Pokemon, maxing out at level 40 with 15s across the board at 2270, which is pretty respectable, with a 0 on attack, 15 defense, and 14 stamina. At level 25, we can hit that clean 1500, which is perfect. And then we do have, according to my spreadsheets and all the numbers that I have ran, Masquerain should be around 70th in bulk and 54th in stat product, which is pretty good in this cup. That's getting close to about middle of the road, but otherwise that's pretty decent. And of course all of that does come from our base stats here, with an attack of 192, defense of 150, and a stamina of 172. Not the greatest stat spread, but we can work with that. And of course we know that all this can be changed according to our moves here. So let's actually take a look at these moves. So we do have them color-coded for our typing here. So color-coded for stab effect, basically. In the fast move area, we do have two moves to choose from here: Air Slash or Infestation. Air Slash here with 3 energy per turn, 3 damage per turn after stab, does get bumped up to 3.6. Infestation here for 3.67 energy per turn, we do get 2 damage per turn with a 2.4 on the damage after stab. Then we do move into our charge moves here. Air Cutter for 55 energy, we get 60 damage at a 1.09. After stab, it does get bumped up to the 72 for a 1.31 on the damage per energy ratio. Ominous Wind here is our only non-stab candidate move. For 40 energy, we do have 50 damage at a 1.25. Lastly, we do have Silver Wind here. For 45 energy, we get 70 damage at a 1.56. After stab, it does get bumped up to 84 on the energy, which makes it a 1.86 on the damage per energy ratio there. So, looking at these moves, I kind of tried to tweak some things and tried to figure out which moves actually end up being a little bit better for us here. Inside of this cup, specifically, Air Slash seems to perform a lot better in terms of our fast move. Even though we forfeit a 2/3 energy gain per turn, that insane bump in damage from before stab, a whole extra damage per turn, is quite big. And I think that that really begins to help us a lot more when we get into some of the matchups up against the grass types and even a lot of the bug types here. Then moving into our charge moves here, Air Cutter first off seems very enticing because it does kind of go hand in hand with our Air Slash, but we already have a flying type move which is going to help cover a lot of things. And then we do have Air Cutter actually being the highest cost move here with 55 energy. It's the highest costing move, which kind of gives it a little less flair in my opinion. And then Ominous Wind and Silver Wind coming in hot with the 40 and 45 energy to fire respectively kind of makes it really cool. Now, of course, Ominous Wind and Silver Wind both have the chance to actually inflict a debuff onto the opponent, which is always really interesting. So, of course, Ominous Wind is going to be kind of a little awkward up against the normal types. You really want to prioritize Silver Wind there, and then Silver Wind is just going to be preferred in a lot other matchups up against like grass types, bug types. I mean, pretty much everything, man. Like Silver Wind, I'm a huge fan of Silver Wind at this point. Back when I was using Venomoth, I used Venomoth only with Silver Wind. I didn't have any other move unlocked on it, but I was super surprised at how good Silver Wind can actually be for you. And oddly enough, in one match, I actually ended up getting 2 Silver Wind debuffs back to back, which was pretty insane, pretty gnarly. Definitely a living on the edge type of move, but if it works out for your favor, holy cow, can it turn the tide. So based on these actual moves that we have here, I am going to actually suggest to go with Air Slash, Ominous Wind, and Silver Wind. At least that's what we're going to go with for the rest of this video. Air Cutter is kind of okay, but it lacks a lot of the damage that I really want out of a move, and it's the highest costing move for just mediocre damage. Infestation, it's not going to hit as much for super effective damage, and it's only going to get us to our charge moves just a tad bit faster, and we're sacrificing a lot of damage, a ton of damage, just to get to our charge moves just a tiny bit faster. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So definitely going to be going with Air Slash, Ominous Wind, Silver Wind here. Now we're going to do something a little bit different starting with Masquerain today. We're actually going to do our shields, but we're going to actually have 2 different shield blocks here. And you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So our first shielding scenario is actually going to be this 0 versus 0, which is where I don't have any shields, my opponent doesn't have any shields. We actually end up doing a 45.5% win ratio here, which is decent. I mean, that's almost half of the cup, which isn't too shabby. Next, we have the 2 versus 0, which is where I have both shields, but my opponent actually has 0 shields. We actually end up with a 92.5. But in that scenario, I'm actually more worried about the Pokemon that still end up beating me. If I have complete shield advantage, I want to know which ones just still flat out beat me. And kind of no surprise here, Vigoroth still can get under our skin pretty good, and a lot of the rock throwers are going to appear here as well. Geodude, Graveler, Golem. I don't quite remember if Credilli was in here, but definitely if it has rock type moves, it's going to be a big deal because we do carry a super duper weakness to the rock type damage from bug and flying types that we do carry. Our next shield scenario is the 0 versus 2, which is where I don't have any shields this time, but my opponent actually has both shields. We actually end up winning 9.7%. And those are actually the ones that I kind of want to know about. And in these, it's not too surprising here. The grass types start to show up a lot, and the bug types do show up here. So with that Air Slash as our fast move, really is going to set us out to be a good grass and bug target here. And I definitely think that's what kind of Masquerain's big role inside of a team is going to be. Our last shield scenario for now is actually going to be the 2 versus 2, which is where I have both shields and my opponent has both shields. We actually end up with a 57.5 here, which is pretty gnarly. And what that actually ends up telling me is that statistically we will do better with Masquerain opening rather than we would with closing. If both me and my opponent have both shields, 57.5 definitely is going to outbeat that 45.5 if we don't have any shields neither way. So here you can see we do have PV Poke pulled up here. We're going to build our Masquerain here with Air Slash, Silver Wind, and Ominous Wind. We're going to give ourselves 1 shield. We're going to give the opponent 1 shield as well, but we're actually going to be doing a multi-battle here inside the Jungle Cup with, of course, 1 shield for the evenness there. Once we hit battle, you can see it is going to give us our entire performance up against the entire Jungle Cup. And what we're basically going to do is go through each of the typings here in our next section, which I like to call the coverage section. Basically, we're going to look at each individual typing available in the cup and just kind of figure out which ones we do pretty strong up against versus which ones we don't. So let's actually start with our first typing, which is going to be the bug typing. And as you can see, we are going to do pretty well up against most of the bugs. You can see Heracross and Beautyfly showing up there at the top. If we see, once we start to get into some weird matchups here, you can see, oh, right there, Scizor, Scyther are going to be 2 different ties that we do have, which is kind of weird, but okay. And then we do move into some losses here. We do have Yanma, Masquerain ourselves. There is a better moveset up against the Masquerain if you're in a mirror match. Beedrill, Fortress, and Armaldo there. Armaldo being a quite interesting one because it does carry that rock typing. It is going to be able to resist a little bit of our damage. And it does look like in the Masquerain section here, Air Slash, Air Cutter, and Ominous Wind, of course, is actually going to end up doing just a tad bit better. But honestly, And with the new setup of fast moves that they have here, yeah, it does look like it could possibly be a problem. Up against the Masquerain, it really, in theory, should be a tie. If they're using Air Cutter, it possibly could get under the skin. It is going to be super effective if it hits, but other than that, it's not going to be too big of a deal. I really think that the Masquerain versus Masquerain is probably going to end up in a tie. Either way, you're pretty much only going to get one charge move off before you die anyways. The bug type actually looking pretty good. With a total of 2 ties and 5 losses, that's actually pretty strong. Next, we're going to go up against the electric typing here, and to no one's surprise, this one's going to be kind of rough. Considering that we do carry that flying typing here, we are going to be at a disadvantage, at least with typings. And Ampharos and Manectric are actually our first 2 Pokemon. We actually tie up against both of those. But then we start to lose here. You can see Flaffy, Lantern, Pachirisu. Let's actually just scroll down to the bottom to see some of our worst possible ones. Of course, the Rock Throwers here, Geodude, Golem, and Graveler all showing up there at the bottom. Pretty rough. But we do have Magnezone, Minun, Electabuzz, Raichu, Electivire, and Magneton all there at the very bottom. You can see that the electric typing is going to be really, really rough to go up against. But as we stated earlier, that's not exactly our criteria on what we want to be going for. So let's actually move on to our next typing, which is grass. So as you can see in the grass typing here, we do have Cherim, both Cherim forms at the very top. Breloom, of course, going to make an appearance here. Let's just scroll down and see some more interesting ones. Let's get down closer to the ties. Oh, okay. So we only have one tie, which is Credilli. Remember, I kind of mentioned him earlier. Credilli actually does really well up against us tying in the 1v1 shield scenario there. And then you can see the only other ones that we possibly would lose to are Tangrowth and Lileep, for what that's worth. So the grass type in general going to be really strong. Of course, that's going to be one of our targets using Masquerain on a team here, so that makes a lot of sense. Our next typing is the normal typing, and this one's kind of split closer towards a 50-50. You can see we do have Kangaskhan there at the very top, one of the easiest matchups for us. If we go down here about midway, you can see Dodrio, Linoon, Staraptor, Teddiursa, and Ursaring all going to be ties for us there. Kind of interesting. Scrolling through a little bit further, you can see Miltank, Girafarig, let's see, Farfetch, Perugly. Yeah, it looks like there's a ton more losses than there are wins here. I think what I have written down is 16 wins and 4 ties, so it ends up being just a little bit weighted towards the negative for us. We don't do as well up against the normal types, but like we said, that's not really our target here. So let's actually move on into our next section, actually looking at the meta for the Jungle Cup and see how Masquerain does up against that. Alright, so right in the middle of recording this deep dive, PvPoke did update, and of course, you know, all of my numbers are hard written on pieces of paper. They're hard copies, they're not like soft copies. And let's, I guess, quickly go through this so you can understand why most of my numbers are probably going to be wrong. Adjusted the default Pokemon IV. So basically in the last update, Pokemon were assigned to rank 1 by default. I hated that. I didn't think that that was very accurate. Most people aren't going to have rank 1 Pokemon, which makes the Sims different. That is very correct. Pokemon now have a pre-generated set default IV roughly equivalent to rank 500. Okay, that's fine, I guess. Pokemon can't be traded like Mew, Jirachi, and Deoxys now obey their respective IV limits, which is perfect. Adjusted level and IV entry and added additional options. That's all fine and dandy. Added breakpoint and bulk point, okay. And added settings page where you can now adjust the default IV combination and to enable or disable timeline animations. So that's gonna screw with my numbers. So let's actually jump into, after this update, our matches section. We're gonna start with our shields here really fast. We're just gonna go through this kind of more live than was predetermined. But our 1v1 shield scenario, of course, is where I and my opponent both have 1 shield. Even shield situation, we actually end up winning a 36.4%, which is actually 8 out of the 22 Pokemon. And let's actually take a look at these really fast. So we do have a win against Breloom, Heracross, Victory Bell, Ivysaur, Venomoth, Vespiquen, Beedrill, and Venusaur. As you can see, our main targets of the cup definitely are going to be at the top there. That's what Masquerain is going to be used for. Credilli, Masquerain, and Scyther, Vigoroth all are actually going to be our ties there. Scyther That's my boy. Then we do have Fortress and Scizor, which, okay, those, even though they're bug typing, they do have a really awkward typing that makes it really hard for us to actually penetrate that steel typing. So those do actually win up against us. Then we have Lantern, Pidgeot, Raichu, Knockdown, Magneton, Magnezone, Golem, and Graveler. Most of those are going to make a lot of sense. We're either going to be taking super effective damage from the flying type moves, the electric type moves, or the rock type moves. All squared away there. So the next shield scenario that I actually want to look at is the 1 versus 0, which is actually where I have shield advantage, but I'm only going to be using one shield up against the opponent. And a lot of times that makes this a little bit more accurate to a real world setting, because I usually wouldn't want to waste both shields on one single Pokemon in a real world scenario, so let's actually see how we fare up against there. So we do have 16 wins here, which does bump us up to a 72.7. Let's take a look here at the top. Of course, our main objectives are going to show up here, like Venusaur, Breloom, Credilli actually moves to a win, Heracross, Ivysaur, Victory Bell, Beedrill, Fortress, you can see moving to a win, Raichu, interestingly enough, moves to a win. Then we have Venomoth, Scizor actually showing up here as well, Vespiquen, Masquerain, of course, we would beat in the 1v1 there, and Scyther moving to a win, Vigoroth moving to a win, Lantern actually moving to a win. Holy cow. Then we do have Magneton, Pidgeot, Magnezone, Knockdown, Golem, and Graveler as our losses there, and most of those still make a lot of sense. It's quite surprising. I'm sure this Lantern, if we actually switch it to Charge Beam, I wonder if it makes that much of a difference. Actually, no, we still end up tying, which is quite interesting. It does look like it's going to be based on charge move priority. Okay, for what that's worth, if you're going up against the Lantern and you do have one shield and they're running Charge Beam, it does end up moving to a charge move priority situation there, but nonetheless, that's cool. Now our last shield setup that we're going to do here is 0 shields for us and 1 shield for our opponent. Here again, flipping the script for our opponents, giving them the shield advantage this time, but expecting them not to use both shields on one single Pokemon. So as you can see here, we do drop down to 4 wins, which is an 18.2% loss. You can see most of our main objectives, again, are going to stay up top. We do have Breloom, Heracross, Victory Bell, Venomoth, and then we do start to lose immediately there at the Venusaur, Fortress, Ivysaur, Scyther, Masquerain, Scizor, Beedrill, Vespiquen, Vigoroth, Credilli, Pidgeot, Raichu, Knockdown, Lantern, Magnezone, Golem, Graveler, and Magneton, of course. Those bottom few are definitely going to be the hardest hitting ones for us personally. Masquerain is very, very interesting. The fact that we do have the debuffs on our charge moves is very, very cool. It's a very, very interesting play style. If that's up your alley, I'd say that's pretty much up my alley. If that's up your alley, holy cow, go for it, because that is so freaking cool. Otherwise, I think Masquerain's role is pretty defined in the cup. I'd say he's definitely a grass and bug type slayer. Other than that, he's pretty scarce on some of the other typings, but in general, I definitely feel like Masquerain is a pretty solid pick. If you can play around his weakness, of course, then he will be very, very strong for your team, especially if as a dying blow, he just like drops defense on the opponent or something like that. Holy cow, would that setup not be amazing? So that is actually going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. I actually do have an outro that I'm going to play from now on, and this will be the first video that I test it. So hopefully it looks okay. I'm sure you guys will let me know down there, I hope. But anyways, roll that footage. Well, you've made it to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, if you do have any ideas for content, please drop them down in the comments below. I'll be happy to look at those for you guys. Of course, if you want to join my personal Discord, get to talking to some people that have a similar outlook as myself, definitely go down into the description, join that Discord there. If you want to become a Patreon, there is a link down in the description for that as well. My outlook on Patreon is I don't want to put anything behind a paywall. This is what I do. You guys get every bit of what I make, and I don't want to limit that to someone else just because they can't pay for something. I didn't think that was fair. If you want to be a Patreon, just know that you're literally doing it from the kindness of your heart, wanting to support me, and I appreciate that you don't even understand how much. There are a couple of other options if you would like to join the community here on YouTube. It's very similar to a Twitch-like subscription where it's a dollar amount per month depending on where you live, and then that monthly fee basically gets funneled to me every month, and you do get a couple of special perks here on YouTube like some badges and some emojis or whatever. I honestly think those are only for live streaming, so that may not be the way that most people want to go, but that's an option if you want to. Other than that, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, that link is actually going to be down in the description as well. And until our next video, guys, that should be it. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out. And until our next video, I will catch you then.